New evidence emerges that the Chinese military may have helped create the pandemic. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Before I begin, help me get the word out about what the Chinese Communist Party is doing. Leave a like and a comment. That helps us with the algorithm so we can get China Uncensored in front of more people. So if you've been following this channel for a long time, it may seem like I'm repeating myself, but when I said it before, no one believed me. And when I say the same thing now, people are like, oh yeah, of course. In this case, about the origin of COVID. Starting at the beginning of the pandemic, mainstream media and so-called experts labeled the idea that COVID came from a lab leak as a conspiracy theory, like something from a comic book. Even highly respected medical institutions like The Lancet strongly condemned conspiracy theories, suggesting that COVID-19 does not have a natural origin. Turns out, that was written by Peter Daszak, the guy doing bat coronavirus research at that Chinese lab. Surely he had no selfish motive in denying that COVID could have come from his lab. Unfortunately for him, many in the US government now believe that COVID most likely originated from that Chinese lab leak. That lab is the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Even before the pandemic, the US government was warning about safety issues at the lab. But new evidence has emerged that the Chinese military may have had a direct hand in COVID as part of a bioweapons program. That's based on 3 previously unrevealed U.S. diplomatic cables obtained through a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit against the U.S. State Department. The cables come from the American Institute in Taiwan. That's the U.S.'s unofficial Taiwanese embassy. The cables date back to July and August 2020. They're heavily redacted, as you can see by all these blank places, but the cables show that the U.S. government knew something was up early on. This one says the COVID cover-up came from officials in Beijing, not from local officials as the Communist Party later claimed. It also says Chinese leader Xi Jinping lied about his role in the cover-up. And the cable has this leaked directive from Beijing, ordering total censorship of people talking about COVID. Color me shocked. They can't even stop their directives from leaking and spreading around the globe. But here's where the Chinese military gets involved. This cable talks about Beijing's military-civil fusion in biotech. So in China, there's no such thing as totally private companies. The Communist Party controls everything. And that means any technology a private Chinese company has doesn't really belong to them. It can be taken by the military, the PLA, at any time. That's why the cable probes the PLA's links to biotech labs and companies in Wuhan. Again, it's heavily redacted. But here's where it gets really interesting. The last cable points to cyber evidence of PLA shadow labs at Wuhan Institute of Virology and Bioengineering University. Shadow labs? No wonder they may have had an accident. They're working in the dark. So what were these PLA shadow labs? And how much of a hand did the PLA have in COVID? This Sunday Times investigation has some bombshell revelations. I'll tell you more after the break. Welcome back. According to the Sunday Times, scientists in Wuhan worked alongside the Chinese military to create the world's most deadly coronaviruses. This is based on a review of hundreds of documents, including previously confidential reports, internal memos, scientific papers, email correspondence, and an interview with U.S. State Department investigators. According to those investigators, the work being done at the Wuhan Institute of Virology was done in collaboration with researchers from the Chinese military, which was funding it and, which the investigators say, was pursuing bioweapons. For years, the Chinese military saw potential in using coronaviruses in general as biological weapons. In a 2015 paper written by 18 Chinese military scientists and weapons experts, they wrote that a coronavirus could be artificially manipulated into an emerging human disease virus, then weaponized and unleashed in a way never seen before. Here's what happened. In 2012, the Wuhan Institute of Virology investigated an abandoned copper mine in the Mojiang region in southern China, not to be confused with the Mojang region, which also has huge caves, abandoned mines, and bats. But the Mojiang cave in southern China was being explored years earlier, while the Wuhan lab was working with EcoHealth Alliance's PREDICT program to search for diseases that can be transmitted from animals to humans. In that old copper mine, 6 men clearing out the bat guano were infected by a mystery illness. It caused fever, coughs, and pneumonia. 3 of them died from it. Now that's a big deal. According to a U.S. scientist who advised the State Department, if those miners died from a bat virus, that was the first time in the history of human science that happened. But according to the Sunday Times, the Wuhan Institute withheld information about the mine deaths from EcoHealth and the U.S. government. Guess the Chinese Communist Party wanted to keep it a secret from the U.S. that they just found a deadly new virus. That might also jeopardize all that nice U.S. taxpayer money the lab was getting to do research. By the way, the viruses found at the mine are now recognized as the only members of COVID-19's immediate family known to have been in existence pre-pandemic. Suspicious? Well, in the years before the pandemic, the Chinese military began working very closely with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, specifically the Academy of Military Medical Sciences, a research arm of the PLA. According to a U.S. Senate report, the military was given positions of responsibility in the Wuhan Institute. Published papers from the lab began listing military scientists. The Sunday Times article goes into detail about how Chinese scientists began manipulating the virus they found, injecting it into humanized mice again and again, making it more contagious, more deadly. I'll leave a link to the archived article below if you want to read it for yourself. Now, as far as EcoHealth Alliance, which got U.S. taxpayer money, was concerned, this research was all about understanding coronaviruses in order to prevent the next pandemic. But according to investigators, the Chinese military had a different motivation. They were looking to make vaccines for viruses so they could be used as bioweapons. If a country could inoculate its population against its own secret virus, it might have a weapon to shift the balance of world power. Now, to be clear, the report isn't claiming that COVID-19 itself is a Chinese Communist Party biological weapon. U.S. intelligence agencies also say they don't believe COVID-19 was a bioweapon. However, according to this U.S. government report on the origins of COVID, a Chinese team was already working on a coronavirus vaccine in November 2019, just as the first cases were being reported. Incidentally, according to witnesses who spoke to the U.S. investigators, the lead Chinese scientist working on that vaccine died after somehow falling from the roof of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. There's still a lot we don't know about the origins of COVID-19, and we probably never will, thanks to a massive cover-up by the Chinese regime. Back in March, Congress and President Biden passed the COVID Origins Act. It requires the U.S. to declassify intelligence on the origins of COVID by June 18th. But, as of this recording, the Biden administration simply missed that deadline, basically ghosting us. May not be a coincidence that this week, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Beijing trying to repair relations with Chinese leaders. So to sum it up, here's what we know. The Chinese military has been interested in bioweapons for a long time. The Chinese military was involved in the Wuhan Institute of Virology in at least some capacity. The Wuhan Institute was studying coronaviruses from bats. And China was already working on a vaccine for COVID-19 in 2019 before it became a global pandemic. On top of all of that, it is increasingly speculated, but not proven, that COVID-19 leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Again, I'm not saying COVID-19 was specifically developed as a bioweapon, since at this point, I haven't seen any evidence of that. But we've certainly come a long way from the days of a lab leak being labeled a fringe conspiracy theory. Now, covering the COVID saga has been very difficult on YouTube. For 3 years, I've been saying that COVID could have come from a Chinese lab. But for a lot of that time, YouTube demonetized our episodes, even completely removed them. Still, we kept on reporting, and that's thanks to direct support from viewers like you. Fans I call the China Uncensored 50-cent army, who contribute to the show on Patreon. For as little as $1 an episode, you can ensure we can keep uncensoring China. Check out patreon.com/China Uncensored. You can also set a monthly limit. You'll get a bunch of cool perks, including the ability to ask me questions I'll answer on the show. Today's question comes from some dude. I have a question. I hear Chris say that YouTube secretly unsubscribes people from your channel. What evidence do you have for this, other than people saying that they were? Ah yes, that's another one of the many ways YouTube messes with the show. Over the years, I've had so many people tell me YouTube secretly unsubscribed them from the show, sometimes multiple times. Unfortunately, I have no way to verify that since once someone is unsubscribed, I can't see any data on them. Now, officially, YouTube doesn't automatically unsubscribe users, but it's become such a common phenomenon that many people are talking about it. China has tremendous influence in American social media companies. We know from a whistleblower that Twitter had even knowingly hired a Chinese spy. That was before Elon Musk, FYI. Twitter was also making big bucks from the Chinese government. If China was so enmeshed in Twitter, imagine what could be going on behind the scenes at YouTube and Google, which are much bigger than Twitter. So what I can say is, if you're watching, subscribe to China Uncensored. And if you're subscribed, make sure you're still subscribed. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever been secretly unsubscribed. Thanks for your question and your support, some dude. And thank you for watching. Again, you can help us keep China uncensored by contributing on patreon.com/China Uncensored. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.